All righty, what's going on? Dan, I just saw South Carolina, the Harvard of West Central. I hate you so much. What's going on, y'all? Welcome. Happy Thursday. We're back with another week of Unicorn Finders. You're probably wondering, like, hey, self, I think I've seen Neural Payments before, and you have. So Neural Payments and Daniel have been on the show last year. One thing we like to do on the show, and the whole ethos of the show, we've kind of transitioned a little bit, but the whole ethos of the show is basically to bring companies on who are doing really cool shit you probably haven't heard of, right? That's a non-LinkedIn appropriate verbiage, but it is what it is, keeping it real here. And so we got to catch up with Daniel. You guys are pre-revenue, early stage, just knocking down doors, building shit, and kind of getting out the door. And as of recent, Neural Payments now has locked up their Series A. They are you guys are in the black, right? Getting there.
I mean, we got revenue coming in the door.
Revenue coming in the door. We're in the black. Let's just say that. Revenue coming in the door in the black. So I wanted to bring them back on. Obviously, I'm dear friends with Daniel, and now I'm dear friends with Mick after he and I've known each other for about 16 minutes now. And so we're going to talk today just about what's going on with them. So, boys, thank you for joining today. But let's do a quick intro for the people who don't know you. So, Mick, if you want to kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us. Mick Oppy, founder of Neural Payments. I come from the payments and banking background. I kept joining banks for some reason, Taylor, and then in these big infrastructures and hierarchical kind of companies, realizing that I probably was not an amazing fit, but I loved payments and ended up at a company called Vantiv, where I ran product for them for several years as we became WorldPay and then eventually FIS. So I've been around debit, credit, and ATMs for a decade now or more. And just getting to watch kind of this constant change within the payment space that we all experience as consumers, often in our checkout experiences. And Neural Payments really came from the combination of both of those things.
I love that. That's awesome. Daniel, give an intro yourself. And for the record, Daniel bought that unicorn for this show. I'm just kidding.
Oh, nice. Hey, so Taylor, if this is my second show, do I get a jacket on the fifth show?
Oh,
we're getting there. Well, we need y'all's cool swag. Well, we'll make it happen. We do need a jacket.
Talk about it. We're pre-revenue, Daniel.
Yeah, we're pre-revenue.
Make it plaid though. Make it like a really obnoxious jacket.
Well, we actually, me, Jake, who's not on the show, and Dan, we all like floral shirts. So we wanted to get like a floral shirt done with our colors because our colors are kind of like purples and pinks and all that. So
yeah.
Done. You have to be on 3 times, Daniel. So good luck.
3 times.
No, 5. You got to be on the 5.
5. Okay.
Yeah. So we got a long way to go. All right, man. Hey, Unicorn Finders fam. It's nice to join you all again. I'm Daniel Norton. I am Mick's CTO. Met Mick at business school. I came to business school while I was still a co-founder CTO of a previous startup called LeanKit. We had a successful exit at LeanKit while I was a student. And so, blah, blah, that's why I got tangled up with Mick, who I thought one of the cool things he did is he used the entire MBA program to test his idea. And he wanted like these, genius professors we had to talk him out of the idea. And over and over again, he failed at getting them to talk him out of the idea. So blah, blah, here we are. So, okay, Mick, if you've been doing this for a decade, I've been doing it for 3 years. I feel like I'm basically a fintech veteran at this point, right?
Oh, yeah. You're in.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, welcome. No jacket.
And then Kylie. Morning. I love Neural Payments. Shout out to my sister-in-law.
Oh, look.
Oh, that's awesome.
Look at that.
That's awesome.
Hey,
I love that.
Hey, Kylie, could you like post the link to this show to Mel? Because I don't know that I told her that it was like live, and I'm sure she would want to get some
live.
Live. We're live, not just live. We're live this morning. And then LinkedIn user.
Make sure anybody that watches that Neural Pay, make sure you add the extra 30 minutes into your day today. Make sure you're not stealing company time here.
Yeah.
This is good expenditure of company time.
Yeah, you can only watch this at lunch. All right. So boys, let's go back over kind of the basic 101. What is Neural Payments and what problem are you guys trying to solve? Who wants to take that?
So Neural Payments is a payments engine meant to connect legacy payment systems with kind of modern payment systems and simplify that for banks and credit unions. How does that apply to a consumer? We make a lot of times as consumers, we use products and have no clue what's happening in the back office. We're fixing that so that we can make consumer experiences better. The first one we've done, Taylor, is P2P. So if I want to send you money right now, the challenge we have is, what if we don't agree on the tool? You're on Zelle and I'm on Venmo. Or
well, I was about to ask you,
PayPal.
who's your biggest competitor? So if you just
it's basically down to just Zelle, which has a ton of fraud that they deal with. Obviously, just look at the news. But we kind of built the opposite of that, of a very lightweight service, but highly connected. So our system allows people to exchange money without being on the same P2P network. So you don't have to both be Venmo. You both don't have to be PayPal. We can allow you to move money from your bank or your credit union to other services.
I do a lot of work with a company called PSCU that's here in Tampa.
Oh, yeah.
Or St. Pete. I'm sure you guys are familiar with them.
I was there. Just Mel and I were there just a few weeks ago.
You should have had Dan.
Yeah, could have bought you lunch or drinks or taken you out boating or go anyway.
We'll be down there in 3 weeks. There's a conference in Tampa, Dan.
I guess I got to come down in 3 weeks too. Unicorn Finders Boating Edition.
Yeah.
Oh, this gets me even
closer. Trying to talk into the mic, Taylor.
Yeah, please come to our session on P2P payment processing for credit unions. But I do know that one of their biggest issues that they have is that a lot of, especially small and regional credit unions can't afford, this type of technology. So is that one of the big problems that you guys are trying to solve, that you guys saw as a niche in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can be live in under 60 days. And wow. You won't find many fintech or banking solutions where someone could be live in under 6 months, let alone. And so you always get asked like, well, can you talk to my core? And how do you do that? There's so many legacy tech within banks that they get really concerned and implementations are really long. We actually made it a very short and lightweight implementation for them. But we leverage tech and things they already know and that they have big investments in. And so, yeah, we've simplified that. That was the whole point, was to make it so easy.
I'm going to pretend like I understand tech here. So you guys have a platform that sits here, and you have Venmo here and Cash App over
PayPal.
Here. Yeah, whatever. Cash App, right?
Sure.
So I send a transaction from my bank. It goes into Neural Payments, and then you guys can spit it out in whatever way that they want to receive money. Is that how the process flows? API tie-ins and stuff?
I like it. So it hits our tech, but
who has a whiteboard? Who has a whiteboard?
It hits our tech, but it doesn't. We don't hold the funds, which is a big deal. And so that the flow of funds is really the bank or the credit union is still the center of that. And that's super important from regulatory kind of pieces, but also settlement and just reporting. They know where the money is at all times because Neural Payments actually doesn't pull it out. You will see other solutions where it's like, hey, we take it and we do all of the servicing, but they also then take the money, Dan, and that's heavy and it causes costs.
Right.
We actually streamline that where we're actually doing connectivity for the bank. And so we don't actually touch the money. We move it for them. We facilitate the movement of money, but we don't touch it, which is a big deal.
Wow.
And real quick, Jonathan, my guy, he goes, do you know Memorex? Are you familiar with that? I don't know. This isn't Memorex.
No.
I guess maybe. Jonathan, if you can expound on that a little bit. I just want to bring that up.
Weren't those the sweet cassette tapes back in the day? So we do not make cassette tapes.
So talk about kind of y'all's. Well, before we move on, I want to talk about, you brought up something about you not holding the money and how that's super important. Can you expound on that and why that's so important?
So a lot of times you'll see certain companies will make money by holding the funds and then they make money on the float. And so you get a delay in the payment. But you also then create a regulatory thing around money laundering and knowing the customer. And you have to have money movement licenses. We can actually remove all of that by just letting the bank, where you trust and have your money, just hold the funds. So Neural Payments just doesn't touch it to make it nice. And then again, the bank on the back office side can see the flow of funds completely. They don't have to go like, hey, is Neural holding this or where is this money? It's one less account to settle up with.
It's been fun, as I've watched our customers and maybe some of our integration partners, like we talk through with them, like, okay, so what's the onboarding process and how do we get our tech lined up? And they always, like many of them ask questions like, okay, well, like what cores do you talk to? And like, well, we don't. And then sometimes people just sit there and they're like, well, what? And then they were like, well, okay, surely you guys have like, there's this whole different accounting thing that all of my people are going to have to learn, and they're going to be pissed off about that. And Mick is like, nope, it's going to work inside the accounting systems that you already have in place. Like, you don't have to learn any new systems to make this work. And there's like this, some people are confused and other people are like, hell yeah.
Well, I guess my question to you is like, so if I'm like some credit union bank person, I'm like, yeah. So why should we use you over Zelle?
Oh man.
What's the answer?
So the answer is twofold. Number one, you as a consumer actually don't care what it's called. The banks have been convinced for a while that they needed or had to have Zelle because of the brand name.
Right.
That was a back office thing. That wasn't an actual consumer driven brand name. So one, your consumers don't actually care which platform it's on, if it's convenient and easy. And two, why give the branding to another company if I can associate your credit union with PayPal and Venmo? If I can co-brand a small credit union with Venmo, that's a much bigger lift than you saying, we support Zelle, right? As a consumer, we're more tied to PayPal and Venmo typically than we are to a third-party fintech brand.
Yeah. So an end consumer, if I am a member of Wilson County Bank and Trust, hey, shout out to Wilson County Bank and Trust on the show.
Shout out Wilson County.
Yeah, right. So I'm a member there. I log into their app and I already have a trust relationship with them, and I'm just using their underlying tech. As a consumer, I'm never going to see the words neural payments. I have that trust relationship with Wilson County Bank. That's where my trust relationship is, right? This underlying tech is just going to facilitate, like, Dan, I can pay you back for, lunch the other day. And that's, what, to me, there's an interesting thing there is that was a couple of the original assumptions were like, what do we use P2P for? It's like, I'm going to pay you back for lunch, or I'm going to pay a gardener and stuff like that. But like, as we have watched the data roll in, man, people are like paying their rent. People are paying for car repairs. Like, so our like average transaction amount is, I think it's very different than what we assumed before we really got started. And that was an interesting, like one of the very, very first, I mean, I will never forget it, right? One of the very first, like, we are live, a real bank is doing this. I mean, some dude, he was like paying for the Chrysler except for the trunk. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but he paid $700 something for that, and he's got a Chrysler now. Good for him.
It was a very specific note, like, yes, I'll buy this car minus the trunk. So we don't know if like the trunk was in disrepair, if it didn't have a trunk, but he definitely got a deal on the car.
Yeah.
So let's talk. So Daniel, obviously when we brought you on, you were early stage, and obviously you have clients now. I mean, can you talk about just that journey and maybe some challenges that you faced, and obviously some success stories as well? Because one of the things we get a lot of from our guests is like, you guys just tell us about like the success stories, like tell us about like the failures and the pivots. Man. And so if y'all can maybe dive into that for a few minutes.
Well, I would say like one of the biggest things is we were nanoseconds from like really, really honest to God going like all the way live with two of our first financial institutions, and, deeply appreciate them for trusting us. I mean, it's kind of a difficult thing for a bank to trust some startup with like no customers, right? And we were like days from like, we're going live, this is all amazing, it's all awesome. And then one of our back end partners was like, hey, that thing that we provide to you that is like kind of, the large intestine of how neural payments works, we're shutting that thing off. But here's a new tool you guys can use. And we were like, it was like record scratch. What? And that utterly derailed us for like an entire, because it took so long.
Jeez.
And like, I mean, even just connecting to their technology was completely different technology. And then like how we talked to their technology was it was a nightmare. I mean, and I don't know, Mick, can we this far along in the process, how many nights did you wake up at 3:00 in the morning during that whole thing in a panic, right? Like that is, I will let Mick talk about that one in a second. I have one of my former co-founders, Stephen Franklin of teaming.com. You guys got to have teaming on the show, by the way.
Teaming's coming on. I've already booked them.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at Daniel doing plugs. All kinds of shout outs from Daniel today.
You know what, Taylor? That's what we did last week, right? And I love doing that. So like, Stephen says that like the startup life is just rapidly moving between elation and terror, right? That's what startup life is. So yeah, Mick, talk about that one. Like during that period where like, yeah, we were about to go live. No, lol. We've got to rewrite half the freaking app. What was that like for you in those days and weeks and months?
It's so stressful, right? You think like you're trying to create this thing based upon integrity. And suddenly when something like that happens, although you don't have control, it feels like you've lied to people. Does that make sense? Where it's like, well, I didn't lie to you because we truly only knew what we knew at the time. But I would wake up in this panic where it was like, no, I told them we would have this done, or I knew we would be to revenue at X, 2 months here. And now we've just been handed this massive curveball, not just tech, but we had to rewrite contracts. We had to do new connectivity. It was this massive overhaul. And so it just felt to me like I had tricked everyone. And so I felt, I don't know, it was just guilt for a while. Like, okay, how do I retell this story and just be transparent again about what's happened? But it still created a lot of just moments of, feeling like I tricked people when we sincerely. And then what was cool, just so we're clear, the positive to this is the network that we went to is one of the top 4. I mean, we are on one of the largest networks in the US, right? And actually adding the rest as we speak. So it was an actual huge positive when it all got done, but it was bridging that gap in the middle. We didn't raise money thinking we were going to rewrite a platform, right? We had done that early round to get to revenue. And now it's like, well, now I need to extend the runway because I've got a much larger challenge here to actually getting live.
So there's a question came in from John. I'm curious, what methods, if any, do you have in place to mitigate fraud and tax evasion?
I love it. So the biggest one that we have, John, is we actually just launched a proprietary fraud engine, which is the first and only of its kind in market.
Oh, yeah.
So no one in P2P has, a lot of them you'll hear they went to Congress and tried to talk about fraud and how they're not responsible for it. We actually took a different approach and said, you know what, we'll give you tools so you can mitigate and control risk at what you're comfortable for. So every bank and credit union actually thinks of risk a little differently. That might surprise people, but they really do in terms of what they're willing to take as risk for their cardholders or members. And so we built an engine that allows them to kind of build these little, we call them fraud libs. That was what the engineering team did. And they work like a Mad Lib. You literally fill out kind of this sentence and it allows you to say, if John has never sent money before, how do I want to treat John? What do I want to allow him to do and not do compared to, Dan who transacts all the time? I can treat individuals and transaction types differently. And so we're super excited for that launch. We know that right now it will block the fraud that we are seeing on the system, if any.
Dan, you got a question? I saw your mouse.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to completely change the subject, but I know back in, I think it was October, you guys got a nice, healthy Series A. Your goal, I know we just talked about enhancing and continuing to build out your platform, but what's kind of your goal there? What are the next few steps for Neural Payments moving forward over the next 6 to 12 months?
So scale is really the big one, I would think. And Daniel, I'll look to you if there's something you want to add there, but scale is a big one on our side, meaning we've signed some massive reseller deals and making sure that we can scale those, not just from tech, but operationally. It's pretty low maintenance, but you still got to think through those and those pieces. That's a big one. I think the second one is just now we're actually doing feature development. For the longest time, it was get people live, get them functional. This fraud engine is our first of kind of many features that we have coming to enhance the experience. Those would be the two that I can think of. And then we have other types of payments. So remember, I started this whole thing, Dan, saying I built a payments engine, not we built a P2P engine. And so we've already started on and are getting asked, could you reimagine bill payment? And could you simplify what is kind of a legacy system there? Could you help with SMB? Because that's a huge one in this space. And so we have several use cases around disbursements and B2B payments where the engine can actually be super valuable.
And I've got another question. FinTech is two really kind of polar opposite groups of people. You have your kind of young, hip, cool FinTech companies, kind of like what you guys are doing. And then you have a lot of more mature legacy employees that have kind of been doing the same thing. Banks, I think a credit union, I think of a lot of people that haven't always kept up with the times when it comes to systems. How do you guys battle some of those, internal communication or, organizations, banks, credit unions, whatever it might be, that are maybe a little bit older in technology or are slow to change management, those kind of, or proving the value of why this is important to like a Johnson County, Iowa, where they're, maybe not as adept with, Venmo and Zelle as maybe somebody in, what did you say, Walker County?
I'd say like one of those things on there, it's been hilarious to me is like, you might ask like, hey, Dan, what have you learned from me? What have you learned, being part of a fintech? And one of the things I've learned is I've learned intimately and deeply about this 70s era communication protocol with a mainframe so that I can move money across it. Right. And
good old mainframe, man.
Programmers make jokes about like, oh, I'm doing the ones and zeros. And none of us do. None of us really do that. No, damn it. This thing, there's pieces of it where you are literally like, okay, 1 0 0 1 1 0 0. Okay, yeah, that's good. Like it's utterly bonkers. And this is like the thing. And the new hotness that is replacing that is, wait for it, XML.
Oh, hey,
let's go.
90s call. They want their hotness back, right? So that's one piece.
But hold on, I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. That's like, I'm glad you said that, right? I'm a nerd. I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. I understand what you said, believe it or not. But I think like for like my mom who's like 62-year-olds at home that may be watching this, like 20 years behind tech, 20 years.
Oh God.
Oh, easily.
20.
Some of these guys are on cores that are 30, 40 years old easily. Yeah. And that was so guys, what we did is we think of some of those rails as like the post office where they have they know where every mailbox is in the US. And it may not be the most efficient thing, but they know where every mailbox is. And what we looked at was, could we take those rails, that concept, and make them super efficient? And that's what we've done. So that's why we can communicate with that legacy tech, but then we can also then communicate with kind of the modern piece. We can actually kind of disconnect them a little bit and then put them back together, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense.
So it's really cool the way we've done that. So to answer your question, Dan, I think of it as we built it, and that was why we aren't a new fintech in terms of most new fintech builds on top of something that already exists. They build on like somebody exposed an API, and then that API does this and this and this, and then eventually gets to the mainframe. And what we fought for and took that extra time to do was to bypass all that and actually go and write those ones and zeros. Because then we have a direct connection into that legacy piece, and we have no middlemen where we're kind of trapped by what they do. And then on the flip side, we went to the modern guys and said, okay, let's figure out their APIs. And then Dan and team have created this kind of interoperability between the two, which is pretty slick.
That's awesome.
That's incredible. Is the largest barrier of entry, or not barrier of entry, just for your guys' growth? Is it just communication and showing what you guys are doing? Is that the biggest barrier?
People know we exist, and that now we have live customers and we're safe. So banks are risk adverse to taking on new providers,
right? Even
though we come from the space, which does buy us some credibility, they're still kind of like, are you going to be here in a year? Are you going to be here in 2 years? And so now it's like, look, we've been around 3.5 years now.
Yeah, been on Unicorn Finders twice, not a big deal.
So now it's like, we're working on our 5-time jackets. So it's getting our name out there. We were hiding for a while on purpose because we wanted to prove everything out. And now it's like, no, we need people to know we exist. They need to know we're here.
Yep. I love that. Well, that's kind of our goal, to be honest, guys. So basically, eventually our video team is going to create essentially a sizzle reel for you based off this conversation that you'll be able to share across all of your platforms as well. So
now I've got one other question. Sorry. So
no, Dan, this is great. Please keep going. My daughter's screaming in the background, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I work with PSCU. PSCU, for those that don't know, you wouldn't know. You guys do a lot of the back office servicing for credit unions, things of that nature. Is a direction to go? Would you work directly with PSCU, or would you have to work with each individual client? How would something like that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
We built the engine. We have clients like PSCU that actually roll up all of their clients and can control and manage their own clients. So again, we built the rails and the engine to be kind of like PSCU could take and build their own, white labeled iteration of this and make it available to all of their credit unions. right? That is very much how the engine was kind of built up. And we talked to a lot of groups like them that are doing that now. So
that's awesome. That's really, really cool. Talk to us about making or raising money. What was that process like for you? How was it? I mean, obviously last year, a big change in venture capital, private equity. We really saw a slowdown, especially towards the middle to end of last year. You guys went through that process. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys ultimately kind of culminated on this round and what that process was like.
It's Daniel's turn next, Dan and Taylor. Just so we're clear, on this podcast, I'm making it clear the next round is all Daniel. I've done my time, right? I feel like
I think I can probably get it done in 12 phone calls. That's
oh, here we go. You heard it here.
Yeah. Challenge done. Challenge accepted.
Hey, whatever Mick is about to say right here. I mean, this he crushed this. He knocked this out of the park. This is like during a down economy, during a fearful economy. We just had started getting revenue. We just had started getting traction, and Mick goes out and hits the road. And I just could not be happier with these aren't just investors he got, man. These are partners that we got. These are premier people that know this space intimately, and our investors can pick up phones and make shit happen, right? And I want the audience to hear what Mick has to say, but before we all hear that, he fucking crushed it.
Well, thanks, Daniel. Dan, I'll tell you, we did form a QSO so that we could work with credit unions, not only directly, but also funds. There's now funds within that credit union space. So we actually have investors whose LPs are banks and credit unions, which is even better. And I think that was what was important to me was we didn't just want capital, even though all those negative things you brought up were like firing on the one side, the other side was like, but we have to have the right partners. Like I can't just get a check to get it. Like, yes, I don't want neural payments to not exist, but I need to have the right partners, or I feel like we just set ourselves up in the wrong way. And so we were very intentional about the groups we were reaching out to and actually who we were willing to have conversations with. And so now what's exciting is, again, all four of ours, I believe, are either banks or credit unions in terms of their LPs. But they also create value. We've got some great articles written. They do introductions for us. They make calls when we're stuck. It's been an amazing, we are very, very, and I'm not saying that because they wrote checks. I really am like, they really did do what we asked, which was like, look, if we're going to partner, you have to create value beyond just writing this check. And all of them have done that, which is fun. But it's intimidating. I'll tell you guys, I hated it. So for me, the learning is you have to get over it being personal. People will say no.
It's kind of like my high school dating life, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah. Let's talk about that more, Taylor, actually. You have to get past it being personal because sometimes it's literally like they have a box of 10 check boxes and you have to check all 10. And they may think you're the greatest person in the world, but you have this one thing that actually doesn't mean it. And they don't make exceptions most of the time. Some will, but most of the time they don't. And so you have to be okay with the fact of like, it's just a miss. It might be the wrong time. It might be just you're the wrong fit. It might be, there's so many variables. And I felt like I wanted to control them all, that eventually, you just had to get past that. And that did take me longer. I appreciate Daniel giving me props there, but it really did take me a while to get past a lot of my own feelings and maybe insecurities around doing it.
That's got to be normal, right? I mean, it is.
Yeah.
I think, right? I hope I'm not the only one.
I will tell you, every founder that we've had on this show that's raised money has always said the same thing. And I think it's true for any part of any sales organization or marketing or growing a business, whatever it might be, that, that it's not personal, but also that, every opportunity, and I know it sounds cliche, but every no is one step closer to yes, but every no or a maybe or we'll see or follow back up with us is an opportunity to look internally and say, can we make this better? Or can I deliver this in a better way, a more palatable way? But obviously it seems like you guys are doing a fantastic job. And as somebody that works with a variety of banks and, credit union type organizations in the area, I'd love to make any introductions that I can when you guys are down in a few weeks. But we have to do it in person. So that's the plug that you have to make time for me.
Done. I love it. Let's really do that. I would tell you the other thing I would tell people is the network of networks is important. There were a lot of VCs where they were like, Mick, you're not a fit, but I really want to make this call. And can I do this intro? And we're super kind. And what's great about that is, we all track it. And so when we come around to that next round, I'm absolutely going to call the person back that even though they said no this time, they were a great partner that led to the next conversation. And so some of it is just, persistence of following, like you said, a no might lead to a yes. Well, that yes might come because they introduced you to that next group.
Right.
So,
I love it.
It's awesome, man.
I love it.
I'm super excited
boys.
for you guys. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
It's a lot of fun. Obviously, friends with Daniel, but it's a lot of fun following you along with this journey, and you will be rooting for you for sure. Well, y'all, thanks again for hanging out with us today.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week. We got a pretty busy calendar. We're actually booked through the end of April. So next week we have a company called Bounty coming on. With Aaron Decker. Aaron's kind of a serial entrepreneur, so we're excited to talk with him next week. And then we have a follow-up with our friend Brian Douglas at Open Sauce, who's basically creating a, essentially a marketplace on GitHub for employers to find top developers. So we're having a follow-up call with him. So they're doing some cool stuff. But anyways, boys, Mick, Daniel, thank you. We appreciate you. And y'all have a great Thursday. Stay on real quick so we can say bye. But bye, y'all.
thanks, guys.
Great job. See you guys.